All right, ladies and gentlemen, hello, and welcome to episode 146 of CONSERVATISH. My name is Peter Edgar Feliciano, and wherever you're listening, make sure you subscribe, make sure you leave a review, rate it, share it with your less offendable friends, and and also you can find me on Instagram at Peter_Feliciano and on TikTok at CONSERVATISH, while TikTok is still accessible in America, and yeah. I'm around. I think that's it. Ladies and gentlemen, our guest today is Keri Smith. Yay.
Hi. Hi, Peter. Thanks for having me on. Thanks for your patience and getting me on. It's been a crazy week. And I think I have to thank Mike Harlow for introducing us, right? It's our mutual friend, Mikey. So thank you, Mikey.
My wife, Mike Harlow.
Your wife.
Together. We've been married for, I think, 23 years. Even though I think his actual age is 21, but that's okay. You know, it's.
Wasn't his age 21 last year?
Listen. You're a former social justice warrior. Would you call yourself that?
Yes, I do call myself that. So I currently host a podcast called Unsafe Space, where one of our shows is called Deprogrammed, and on that show we spend a lot of time trying to dissect my old ideology. But I pushed social justice ideology for about 20 years, from the time that I was pulled into it in college until around 2016 is when I started waking up from it. And it's been a slow process leaving it, because I think it operates a lot like a cult. And so leaving it happens in stages. It's not like an overnight thing, you know? And now we spend a lot of time talking about it, even on our other show. We do a live show called Daily Covfefe. We talk about it on that a lot too, because now my old belief system it's everywhere. In the past month, corporations are speaking. Amazon's telling me about systemic oppression, you know. So
I logged on to T-Mobile earlier and they said, we're standing in solidarity. It's like, shut the fuck up.
Shut up. I don't need that from my phone company. Are you? Yeah. Can you imagine if they were pushing fundamentalist Christianity? You know, you log into T-Mobile and they're like, we are standing with God on it. It's the same. They're pushing a belief system.
And yet these people are the same people who are anti-corporation. And so they don't smell bullshit when it comes to their stuff. For some reason, all along the line, they've smelled bullshit when it came to other causes that companies believed in, right? Now all of a sudden they're on their cause and they just think, this is because our cause is righteous and pure and true. I was actually, one thing you brought up, and by the way, is that the only thing you want to plug is just Unsafe Space?
Yeah, Unsafe Space. Okay. You can find us at unsafespace.com. And we have a book club if people want to join our book club.
Ooh, I actually started Thomas Sowell, Disparities and Discrimination. Have you read that one?
I haven't, and he's on my list of people I would love to do in the club.
Good. It's so good, but then I literally just started it again today, because the problem with Thomas, just like the promise with some of my other favorites, Camille Paglia, Jordan Peterson, is that I have to, every other word, not every other word, but it's close to it. I have to be like, wait, what the hell is that? What is it? Because especially Thomas, who's an economist at heart. So really this whole book is talking about an economy, like a very statistical, and so he's talking about prerequisites and all this, and his sentences, can be very confusing, but I absolutely adore the book. But I was just talking with, not an Instagram comment is not really a talk. It's not really a conversation, but I was answering back to somebody who I know I think I met her once at like some open mic. I asked her out and nothing happened or whatever, but we were Instagram friends, and she commented something like, I listened to this episode. She's never listened to any other episode. And this last episode, good gravy. I just have to say, by the way, to all the people who got through episode 145, I love you very much. And because I went off. I actually had one friend who listens every week. He's a good friend of mine, and he sent me a message. He's like, I love this last episode, but are you okay?
Oh, wow. That's a good response.
He's like, because you just seem upset. I'm like, no, I'm doing amazing. Like, I'm so happy. But anyway, so God bless all of you who got through that last episode. she commented, I listened to this last episode, and I have a lot of problem. She's never listened to any of the episodes, and she said one of the things she brought up was how I'm making generalizations, which I think kind of makes sense. I don't think I've ever poo-pooed the idea of making generalizations in conversation. And essentially what she was saying was, what you had said as far as the cult thing, like there's insanity on both sides, right now. But in the current cultural landscape of conservatism or right or whatever you want to call it, there's nothing built into the system culturally that would make people who were just right of center have to bend to the will of the crazies on the far right. Does that make sense? There's nothing built into the culture. So somebody like me who's conservatish or whatever the hell can go, no, that's some bullshit, or no, I don't really, whatever. But somebody on the left, the reason why she had a problem with my generalizations was because there's, essentially having a problem with both sides of it, and how I was not, I was only looking at the vulgarities, like the most extreme examples of far leftism, and giving them shit in the last episode. But there is something built into at least the cultural liberalism, which has to bend to the will of people who are even extreme far left, because it's understanding and empathy. It's they believe it to be. Exactly.
Yeah, they believe it to be.
Right.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I encounter that a lot too. It's so the right and left dichotomy, it's not very important anymore. I don't believe it is. I still have to speak in those terms to people who think it is, but I think it's right now where we're at this moment in history. What we're seeing is are you an authoritarian or are you an individualist? That's the way I look at it. That's all that I care about. And and the authoritarians on the right, there just aren't that many of them. And the ones that do exist now they're growing, I think, as a consequence of this massive authoritarianism on the left. They're pushing people into the alt-right or into ethno-nationalism, to white nationalism. They're actually growing that. It had been receding, and it was at a place where it was maligned in society, and the mainstream right did not pay lip service to that or excuse that, or they didn't excuse their crazies the way the mainstream left does. But so the authoritarianism on the right has been, at this moment in history, in the US, I don't think very powerful at all. But the authoritarianism on the left has become mainstream. It's everywhere. And I don't know how many people it is, and I argue about this with fellow liberals sometimes who think it's just a very vocal minority. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter about numbers. Even if it is a vocal minority, they hold all these they hold a very large microphone. They hold powerful positions. They run all of our cultural institutions. It's infected corporate culture, corporations. It's infected. It's in academia where it started. It's big social. It's in entertainment. It's all over social media, all the big social companies. So, it doesn't really matter to me what the numbers are if the microphone is very large. And the authoritarianism on the left right now is huge. And so that's why when people come at you like she did with that sort of, why are you criticizing the extremes on the left? Well, like, as a liberal, I'll answer, the reason I criticize the extremes on the left is because I view it as an ever-present danger. It is the most dangerous cultural element in our society at the moment. In my opinion, it's much more dangerous than the authoritarianism on the right at this time in history, where we're at. I'm not talking about the past. I'm talking about right now. And also the other reason I criticize the extremes on the left is because that's my home. I'm a lifelong Democrat. I just walked away. I'm an independent now, but I'm still a liberal on most policy issues, and I don't know the right. I leave it up to the people on the right to criticize their crazies. I want to criticize the crazies on my side, so-called side, But
right. Yeah, that's the same thing. So I started this podcast about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago. And thank you very much for sharing that thing yesterday, the Musicians Alliance Against Woke Ideology or whatever
That's
it's called.
cool.
Ah, it makes my heart so it's swelled with happiness. I'm taking a break from social media today because I have to do that sometimes. But otherwise, I would be liking and fucking retweeting all their shit. Well, the sun is in my fucking eye. All right, I'm just gonna give up. But the thing that I started it was because, and why I call it, mostly the main reason I call it conservative, is because I didn't want to be in a goddamn box, and our definitions very quickly caught up to me. The idea that I would have to tell people, well, I started it because I'm a little conservative and I'm a little liberal, or on a lot of different things. One of the examples was, can't I like gay people and guns? Like, why does it have to be one fucking side or the other? I literally come from, like, I have, I grew up in the fucking Bay Area. You know what I mean? Of course I grew up around gay people. I've fooled around with some dudes. It's not my thing. I've done volunteer work for drag queens, and I've done volunteer performances for the SF Leather, and I've done all that stuff. But I also don't think guns are all that fucking bad, and I also don't like large government, and the definitions is what caught up to me as far as that goes, because for me to just say a blanket, I'm a little liberal and I'm a little conservative, means that I'm already putting in someone else's head, or I'm trying to match what someone else's definition of what liberal is and what conservative. Because I don't know a lot of I know a lot of conservatives and I know a lot of liberals. I don't know any conservatives who don't like gay people. I don't know fucking one. So I don't know why it's been put into this box as if we're in 1960 or even 1990. It's been 30 fucking years, and yet we're still acting like conservatism is against gays.
Yeah.
As an example.
Well, I think everything has changed. Both parties have changed. The Overton window, that's the idea of what's acceptable discourse or acceptable opinions to hold has shifted. And Peter, I voted for I like your title, by the way, conservatish. You could maybe put me in that camp because I'm conservative.
Hang on 1 second.
Oh yeah.
Hang on. I'm sorry. I got a call and I just got rid of it.
That's okay.
So you're saying the Overton window?
The Overton window, like the idea of what is acceptable, the acceptable discourse or acceptable opinions to hold has moved, and it's brought everything with it. And so I just voted for my first Republican in 2018. I voted for Ted Cruz because I looked at him and I looked at Beto and I said, wow, the Republican is the more liberal of the two candidates. Because this guy's an authoritarian. He's on the left. He's a leftist authoritarian, but I can't vote for that. I got to go with the liberal, the most liberal. And that's where we're at. We're in it's like an upside down world. But you're right. People are still operating. I think it's this false reality of where they think we are. Like they imagine things to be so much darker and more bleak than they really are. You see things like Colin Kaepernick, okay? He just posted all this stuff about the 4th of July and how he'll never celebrate it and it's oppressive. And, 4 years ago, there are tweets from him, or 5 years ago under Obama's administration where he's happy 4th of July, and he's celebrating it. What happened in those 4 or 5 years? Things didn't get more racist. I mean, actually, I do believe, here's where I agree with them. They have gotten more racist, but it's because it's as a result of social justice ideology pushing racism. But, they have this dark vision of the world and they want things to match up to that. And it's almost like they're manifesting the darkness that they want to see around. They're manifesting the boogeyman that they want to fight,
As far as, by the way, just as an aside, I know because I've listened to your show. I love that fucking episode you did with, with Buck Angel. Holy shit.
Buck Angel.
Oh my God. I fucking love that dude. And I did say, I love that dude. And that episode is amazing, but I did notice, like, as far as where I fit on the spectrum, like, I know you haven't heard any of my stuff, but I'm kind of like you, but I say the N-word and I talk about sex. That's you know what I mean? Exactly. I'm like, as Mike Harlow puts it, I'm the Howard Stern of podcasters. I really am Jesus come down to save you. But I've been, in looking at like where we're all fitting on this thing and whatever, it has gotten more scary as far as the shame thing goes. There's a lot of people who have gotten messages from, especially like liberals, leftists, who I've even had on my show, who are sending me messages on the slide, just like, I know I'm going to get called a Trump supporter soon. Like, I know I'm going to get called a right winger, even though I'm a super fucking left winger. And I'm like, so let me question you about this. Where specifically along the line? I've been talking about this for a few months. Do you remember the movie Milk?
Yes.
Yeah, love that movie. One of the things Harvey talks about is that the way to make gay people more acceptable is, or whatever, the way to get the majority of voters to vote that it's okay for gay people, is if they know a gay person, right? His big push was everybody come out of the closet. If your mom knows that she has a gay son, if they know somebody that's, oh, my grocer's gay, or my this gay, or my that. So coming out was a big, powerful tool in general cultural acceptance of homosexuality.
Yeah.
I feel like it's the same kind of fucking way with conservatism, if I will, or at least dialogue, or whatever you want to call it, non-leftism.
Yes.
People kind of have to come out, and I can both understand on a big level. Nobody needs to be a big bald fucking podcaster. Like, nobody needs to be like, hey, I'm going to start a show where I'm just shooting it up. There's only like one or two secrets I won't talk about on my show. Otherwise, I've talked about literally everything. And so I understand that not everybody has that vibe or wants to put themselves out there in that way, or even wants to, it's scary. It's scary to be like, to your job where you're hearing all around you, especially if you're white, by the way. If you're hearing all around you that white people are Satan, if you don't fall in line, yes, we're Satan. You could get fired. But where along the line is it no longer okay to go, well, I got to protect my where along that fucking line? Because
out, yeah.
I'm not saying it's now, but at a certain point, it's kind of, you know what I mean? Like, once the gulags
starts, then it's too late. Yeah, that's a great question, Peter. It's something I think a lot of us have been wrestling with lately, and I'm sure it sounds like your audience and our audience probably have a good overlap, because I'm getting people asking me that same question and how to speak out. And I get a lot of messages, like you said, from people on the slide, a lot of liberals and progressives who are afraid to speak, but who are starting to feel compelled to speak against social justice ideology, but they're trying to figure out, they're trying to get through their fear, and they're trying to figure out what they want to say and how best to say it. And so I think fear is an individual thing. We all tackle it individually, and there's no timeline. Like, some people won't ever get over it. It took me about 6 months, half a year, 6 months from the time that I realized I felt compelled to say something about my own belief system. I thought it was wrong. I realized I thought it was wrong. It took me a while to even get there. But once I got there were another 6 months of me living in fear of saying what I actually thought about things. But by the time I started speaking, I want people to know it's so much better on the other side, because no matter what the consequences are, once you have to be willing to accept the consequences. I had an entertainment executive, an old friend of mine, called me a few weeks ago, and we had a 3-hour conversation because she feels compelled to say something now, and she thinks she can find the right way to say it, and I hope she does. But she also is wrestling with the fear of, what if I get canceled for speaking against this belief system? And she has a very comfortable life and a really high-powered, well-paying job, and that fear is legitimate. But if you get to the place where you think the consequences of you not speaking are greater than the consequences of you speaking, then you should say something. Or like Jordan Peterson, who you mentioned, I've heard him say, don't say anything that makes you feel weak. If you start to feel weak or like a fraud or bad about not saying something, speaking truth that you feel compelled to speak, then I think it's time for you to figure out how to find an outlet for that. And everybody's going to find a different way. Like you said, not everybody has to start a podcast. some of the most important conversations happen with the people who you are close to in your life, who love you and are more willing to listen to you disagree with them because they love you. So it could just be over dinner, daring to say, well, I don't agree with that, and asking questions out of love to get them to explain themselves more, and then you explain yourself more. Like those little conversations are some of the most important. And a lot of times we silence ourselves in those because of fear of ostracization or fear of being, like you said, being thought of as as evil. But your point about Harvey Milk and about coming out is really important. What they've done, what social justice leftism has done, is it's funny because they use the term other a lot. They've completely othered anyone who's not in the belief system, and they dehumanize them. I've seen people on the social justice left call all Trump voters white supremacists. That's crazy. It's factually untrue, and it's dehumanizing to those people, and it belittles white supremacy, so it makes it harder to actually fight things like white supremacy, because now you're just using that term willy-nilly for anyone. But so people are afraid of being lumped into that evil category, and it keeps them silent. But when they come out, here's one quick story. A friend of mine, I knew her, so I used to work in entertainment. I knew her from back then. We were just colleagues. We worked together we were potentially going to work on this album together. And anyway, we weren't close friends, but I knew her. We were friends on social media. When my beliefs started changing, when I got over my fear and I started speaking, she was one of many people who reached out to me, like on the sly, like you say. And she came out to me as a closeted Trump supporter, and also not white. And so people around her and at her job and everything, they would just assume she was on the social justice left, and they would say things in front of her, and her boss would say things in front of her about Trump voters, awful things about Trump voters. And over the time, we became really good friends, and she slowly started getting over her fear and started saying stuff. And she, just like you said, like the coming out, humanizing yourself, she eventually came out to her boss as a Trump voter. Her boss said something off, just some awful comment about Trump people, and she used that opportunity to say, like, I am one. Like she came out, and it changed things for her. And so I think that's the power of like of what you're talking about, of what Harvey Milk was talking about we've gotten to a place, it's so weird, a place where conservatives are now having to humanize themselves just for having different opinions on economic policy or healthcare policy, or right. And you're putting all those people in some evil category because they disagree with you on policy positions. That's insane.
Right.
That's kind of a long ramble, but
no, I appreciate it. So besides just the, because like I said, I live in Manhattan now, but I did grow up mostly in the Bay Area. And I do know still a lot of liberals, and two things. One thing, sometimes it won't even be overt support. So like, as an example, I have this ex-girlfriend who we love each other very much. We still talk every couple of weeks or whatever. We'll send a text message, blah, blah, blah. And we were having a conversation maybe 6 months ago, and she had already known. Like, I remember she literally called me the night that Trump won, crying, terrified, right? And at that point, I had voted for Bernie, and then I voted for Hillary, and I was like, I tried to help her calm down, help her comfort her, whatever. And I also was kind of in the back of my mind thinking, it's not that fucking bad. Like, I don't like the dude either, but it's not that bad. And then like about a month or two later, I decided to do a little research into Milo and was like, oh, I kind of like some of this shit. Fuck.
Me too.
Like my internal dialogue when I'm realizing that, oh my God, like when doors open for me is usually, oh shit, I'm that? I don't want to be a conservative. God damn it. Like, I don't want to fucking, but about 6 months ago, we had a conversation, and she asked me point blank. She was like, wait, are you a Trump supporter? I was like, I mean, define supporter. You know what I mean? Like, because I talked about on the last episode, for me, what Trump support means is I don't support the other side. Ta-da, like that's as clear and fucking concise as it can get. Am I saying it's a blanket a tacit endorsement of everything Trump's ever done? Absolutely not. Am I saying I stand behind that he can do no wrong? Do I actually get weepy when I hear, and I'm proud to be in? No, I don't. You know what I mean? But I really don't like totalitarian liberalism, like you were talking about, or leftism, if you will. And yet she has stayed friends with me. And yet she has stayed friends with me. And so a lot of this is people on the quiet. It's like little Easter eggs they'll find later when it's time, when they have the gun, when she's got a gun pointed into my mouth, she's going to be like, oh shit. You know what I mean? When she's ready to be like, yes, I will vote to kill all Trump supporters. Oh, wait, I have an ex-boyfriend and I love him to death. And why do I know this person who I know votes Trump and yet I love them? It's like, surprise, God damn it. You know, we're humans. We're fucking humans. And I also want to bring up to you as a question, because throughout my experience, and I live a spiritual life. I've been sober since I was 15 years old. I was a real bad baby before I got sober. And I've done a lot of,
congratulations.
Thank you. I've done a lot of therapy over the years. And when I look at my own experience with shame, I can literally look at how pervasive and powerful the idea of shame is, and the amount of time and energy I have put into absolutely beating the ever-loving shit out of myself, right? And yet these on the whole, these liberals, these leftists, whatever, are very therapeutic oriented people. So they understand how powerful and hurtful and abhorrent the idea of shame is. And yet they have no problem turning that evil device on people who don't agree with them. So where do you think, because it's not an evilness, like I was a part of a kind of a semi-cult before, like I get marching in step, I fucking understand. But where along the line does that desire or does that therapeutic knowledge just completely get thrown out the window from your own experience, maybe?
That's a good question. I think it's that you can convince people.
You might speak up a teensy bit more.
Can you hear me now? I had to mute myself for a second because the doggies were going crazy. I think that you can get people to commit. One way that you get people to engage in horrible behavior or even to commit evil acts is to convince them that what they're doing is good and that they're good ends, and to believe that they're morally justified in doing it. We just read a book for Unsafe Space book club called Ordinary Men. It's one of the ones that Jordan Peterson recommends.
Right.
It's about a police battalion during the Holocaust, a German police reserve battalion that was sent to Poland and played a big part in executing thousands upon thousands of Jewish people. And these were ordinary men in the sense that they were reserve police officers. They had other jobs, like, you know, a barber, like a dentist. It was just these guys who were pulled together. And then the book explores how you take them from a place of normalcy into making these horrible things they're doing normal. And part of what Hitler believed in, was they did indoctrination ceremonies or indoctrination seminars, where they would sit through indoctrination and then they would sit through seminars on how to indoctrinate others. And some of the titles of these workshops were things like race as the basis of our worldview. Well, what does that sound similar to right now? Like, what is that? All these seminars that, like, the city of Seattle's forcing their white employees to go to seminars about white supremacy, you know, as the basis of our worldview. They're teaching very similar things. They think that they're fighting evil. But I would argue they're actually helping to turn people into beings who are more capable and more comfortable treating people horribly because they believe what they're doing is good. And so there's since you like Peterson, I know I've mentioned him a few times now. He talks about Carl Jung and about I've heard him talk about the shadow self, about how, you know, all humans are capable of good and evil. And until we come face to face with our shadow self and really acknowledge the evil that we're capable of, then you can't really protect yourself from engaging in it because you're not even aware that it's there. You're in denial about it, that you're even able to do things like that. And I think a lot of social justice warriors have not encountered that shadow or don't acknowledge that it's there. And that's a very scary thing to me because then it's so much easier to just fall. They always, what do they say? We're on the right side of history.
Right.
Wow, what kind of horrible things could you possibly do when you think you're on the right side of history, right? You could be manipulated into doing all kinds of evil. And one other quote you're making me think of, gosh, this is Huxley, who this is not from Brave New World, but this is something he wrote in an essay. He says, the surest way to work up a crusade in favor of some good cause is to promise people they will have a chance of maltreating someone, to be able to destroy with good conscience, to be able to behave badly and call your bad behavior righteous indignation. This is the height of psychological luxury, the most delicious of moral treats.
Yep.
That gives me shivers because that's exactly what it is. People are indulging. When I see Antifa people putting on a mask and going out and beating people with bike locks and bloodying people and initiating violence against other people, I see people who are delighting in exercising their shadow self without even realizing what they're doing because they think it's like good. They're given permission to behave horribly because they think it's in the service of good. I don't know if that answered your question, but
it does. Yeah, it does. And I do want to get into your history of that, but I do want to also say, I mean, one of the things I talked about on the last episode was this: if you know, I paint with a broad brush, like we all do from time to time.
Right.
And one of the things that actually that lady brought up to me, everyone cover your ears, is about to get adult for a second.
Okay.
But I one of the things I joke about is that if you've been to more than 3 marches in the last year, you haven't squirted in at least 6 months. That's a and how
that took me a second. Hey, you might be right.
Here's the thing, and
hey,
yes,
I will say, when I was sexually frustrated, I was really big on my social justice activism.
Surprise, surprise! I fucking told you, you motherfuckers. And of course, there are exceptions to that rule. But I see it both on the far right as well. I see anybody who's got that much animus, anybody who's got that much, not just energy, not just time in the fucking day. It's also, besides quite literally not happy sexually, I'm talking about the vibe of that, the self-care that's lacking from that, the self-honesty to go, I want a relationship. I'm going to go on dates. The self-honesty to go, I really like this guy. I'm really terrified he's going to hurt me, but there's some, or not physically, but like, I'm really terrified he's going to hurt me, but you know what? I'm willing to risk it because I've done the work. I've done the fucking work. And if you take your political opinion so seriously, right or left, that you have to go to march after march after march or wear fuck Trump t-shirts in a fucking store, or whatever, you're showing me that you're not taking care of yourself. You're showing me that you haven't done the work to heal, like you were talking about, right?
Yeah.
Because my beliefs are so important and so righteous, I can't make fun of them. I can't even see somebody. I mean, like, I hear Trump jokes all the time and I laugh. Like, I'm not, he's not a sacred cow to me. I don't give a shit. I mean, like, if you can't even not only just laugh at it, but question your own beliefs and also not dehumanize the other side of your beliefs, then you're not getting properly fucked. You're not taking care. You're not doing the spiritual work. And really, I think, how in this land of, did you ever see A Century of Self?
No, what is that?
It's a beautiful documentary on, it's actually on YouTube, The Century of Self. And what they did is they talked about how advertisers have morphed have used, actually, especially in the 60s, 70s, when EST came out and like all this, like when all this therapeutic language, all of a sudden, instead of like it was in the 40s, 50s, you have to wear this hat to be the real American woman. Then it became, you have to do good things for yourself. And so they used advertisers, and not maliciously, I don't think. I don't think there's some giant government, whatever. Not maliciously, they just want money. They're built to, they want money. And so they used take care of yourself as now that's the new impetus to buy something, right?
Yes.
And it's a beauty, and it goes through a whole century of how this, became.
That's
And
interesting.
it's a great documentary. And why did I start talking about it?
Oh, you're saying you haven't done the spiritual work if you're out like trying to push your.
That's what it was. If even though we've grown up, especially leftists, like grown up in this whole idea of very therapeutic language and therapeutic, like take care of yourself. I mean, to the point where they don't want black kids to get in trouble for doing the same shit that a white kid does in school. Where did we drop the fucking ball? Is it consequences? Is it participation trophies? Even though we've been so therapeutically minded and love minded, where the fuck did we drop the ball with these kids?
Yeah.
Where do you think it?
Wow. Well, I think that my co-host on Unsafe Space Carter, he always says, the Breitbart quote about how politics is downstream from culture. So we talk a lot on the show about how this is the battle against my old belief system, the system of beliefs is a cultural battle. But he argues also that that culture is downstream from philosophy. And so he thinks we dropped the ball on philosophy and we allowed philosophy to be corrupted with these kind of identity politics, Marxist beliefs. And that, we started indoctrinating. I was indoctrinating in college, but now they're teaching this stuff. They're teaching social justice to elementary school kids. But I think your question gets deeper than that. You're asking like what primes them to receive it in this way. Yeah, maybe there's something there. I want to see this documentary now. Maybe there's something there about the focus on the self. But here's what's weird, Peter, and I think you know this. You're saying this. They focus on the self. A lot of it is narcissism. It's all about, my unique identity. I check off all these boxes and all these identity groups, and these are marginalized and these are privileged. And, they all have their identity groups in their bio and their pronouns and everything. It's all like super narcissistic.
Right.
But at the same time, they don't focus on self-growth. There's nothing inward. It's all outward. That's why they're out in the streets protesting. And like Jordan Peterson says, they can't make their bed or clean their room. They don't have their shit together, but they're out there trying to tell everyone else how to make the world better. It's like, but you can't even organize the smallest of spaces or your own life.
Maybe it's because growth comes from uncomfortability. And they're taught, like you're saying, they don't have self-growth. Growth comes from uncomfortability. Growth comes from, I really don't think, and not like pain is the touchstone of, not necessarily. It sometimes is. But sometimes it's, remember that scene from The Last Crusade, Indiana fucking Jones or whatever? Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade?
Yeah, anyway. Which scene?
Okay, so at the end when he has to go through all these traps in order to get to the Grail.
Right.
And at the end, there's a big chasm. And his dad is dying back on the other side of the tunnel that he just, got through with the knives and the blah, blah, blah. And there's the part, there's a giant chasm. And, he reads in the book, it's something about faith, right? And he's like, man, how the hell am I can't jump that. I can't do, he reaches a point where through desperation, because his dad is dying and because they have a bullet and because of whatever, he just decides to take the step. He doesn't need to leap. He doesn't need to whatever. He just takes a step forward, even though there's no ground. And then all of a sudden there's ground there, right? Yeah. So that's uncomfortable. On so many levels, personally, interpersonally, so many times I'm like, I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to make it. God, what the fuck? You're fucking with me. This is bullshit. I don't have it. All this stuff in my head, but I move forward through the uncomfortability and I grow.
Yes.
So maybe it's because we've sheltered them from the uncomfortability.
You're so right. Protecting them from that. There's a book on this. I don't know if you've read Jonathan Haidt's The Coddling of the American Mind, but you would probably like it. He gets into some of the stuff you're talking about, the psychological reasons why the millennial generation they have more anxiety, they have more depression, and also simultaneously they've been sheltered from so much more. And look, when I was a social justice warrior out in the streets protesting all the time and complaining about the patriarchy and the white supremacist culture and all this, it's so much easier than self-growth working on myself has been so much harder. And that I'm so glad you brought up that scene, because that's exactly what it's like. It's in the past few years, I've grown so much. It's almost like when I got out of my ideology, I feel like I woke up as a 20-year-old because I spent 20 years in it. I woke up having to certainly learn all these things I should have already learned, and life experiences I should have already, but it really has been a period of growth and then stasis, and then there's like accelerating events where I learned something finally after many, many lessons where I never learned it. I finally get it, right? And there's been so many times where I've had to take that leap of faith, and it's been the scariest thing I've done. Like I ended a toxic relationship, well, that I was in after I destroyed my marriage. Um, I was in this really bad relationship, and it, even though I knew I needed to end it, I was so afraid, and but we're getting into something personal now. It has nothing to do with social justice stuff.
No.
But this, you don't know, because I've got a friend now who's going through a breakup too, and one of the things I was trying to say to her was like, sometimes we stay in unhealthy habits or compulsions like addictions, relationships, jobs, or even ideologies because they are what we know. And the great unknown, taking that step into the darkness, is scary. And a lot of times people would rather just stay with what they know. And but when you take that leap of faith, and even though you're afraid, you take that step you think you should make. You do something different and you take that step. You have no idea what's on the other side. And what I've come to realize is that there are amazing opportunities and jobs and relationships and positive habits, and there's so many things you can't even imagine because you're in the negative stuff that that makes you feel safe and secure. But when you go through that fear, it's like on the other side. I look back now at kicking this person out of my house, and how that was so hard, and I was so afraid to do it. And I look back now and I'm like, why didn't you do that sooner?
Right.
Like it was the best thing to do, and you just have to get through the fear of doing it. You don't even know what great things are on the other side. And when you get those negative things out of your life, whether it's a habit or like a job or person or whatever it is, ideology, you're going to open up space for like so much positive stuff. I know I'm sounding hippy dippy now, but it's
No.
true. You're going to open up space for things that you can't even imagine yet because it is the unknown.
Right.
And they do that. They encourage you to stay in this like negative world where everything's somebody else's fault. Fear is uncomfortable. Don't do anything that's scared. You
Right.
protect yourself. It's like this fake kind of self-care in a way.
Right. What was because I remember you saying it was 6 months or so, maybe that process. What was the first thing that you can recall? Like for me, like I said, I've always been kind of anti certain shades of feminism, if you will. But mostly, I was falling in line. I like Black people, so I'll vote for, liberal. But what, for me, it was Milo. What happened for you? Was it I think you said it was somewhere in a meeting or something. Someone said something. You were like, wait a second, what was it for you that started? What was the impetus?
Well, for me, there were a few things. I think people have to be reached emotionally. They're not going to respond to factual arguments. It's better. I mean, you have the facts on your side, right? If you're challenging social justice ideology, I truly believe the facts are on your side. However, you have to learn how to make an emotional argument first and support it with the facts. You can't just go in with bum, here's statistics, that counter you. They're not going to listen.
Right.
And so emotionally, what happened, there were a few things that happened, but one was during the summer of 2016, leading up to the election. I went down a rabbit hole on YouTube of videos of Trump supporters being physically attacked by people who were supposedly on my side, by leftists, right? And I had never seen these videos, and YouTube today has altered their algorithm in such a way it'd probably be hard to even go down that rabbit hole today. But in 2016, that was still possible. I saw one video, it led to another video, it led to another video. And so I was watching these people being bloodied, surrounded by a mob, things thrown at them, just hatred and vitriol heaped on them just for going to a rally of an opposing candidate.
Right.
And it made me, I was so emotional about it. And I started crying. I was really, I just didn't know this was happening. And in my
Right.
little SJW echo chamber, I never saw stuff like this. I was being fed a particular narrative, and this was not part of the narrative. And so that started some cognitive dissonance with me. That was like, wait a minute, but I thought Trump supporters were the violent ones, and I thought Trump supporters were the hateful ones. And so watching all that like viscerally affected me, and it stuck with me. And so then it was a few things that, and then I saw the cops in Dallas who were killed at the Black Lives Matter
Right.
rally. The 6 cops, the sniper killed them, and people in my echo chamber, there were SJWs in my echo chamber who were supporting it, who were like cheering it on. And that gave me chills because I was like, I'm not for murder. Like, what are you talking about? Like, that doesn't, that it just, I couldn't wrap my head around that. And it kind of helped out. And at first, it's funny because it's almost like, you know how they say that it's not just a few bad apples in the police, it's the whole system is corrupt. Well, at first I was with the social justice ideology. I was like, well, maybe there's just a few bad apples in social justice ideology who support
Except
murder.
for what's built into the fucking culture. Except for what's
Yes.
built into the culture, because a nice white lady can't go, wait, I kind of disagree with this, because some black bitch who hasn't been fucked in a long time is going to go, hey, kick her out, kill her, da-da-da, dehumanize this white bitch. It's horrendous. That's what's built into the cultural structure.
Built into the belief system itself, yeah. So
Fuck.
I struggled with that, trying to, it took me a while to realize it wasn't just a few bad apples. It was, the whole ideology was racist, and it was sexist, and it was about viewing people as collectives. It's a collectivist ideology, like white supremacy. It tells you to look at people on the basis of race and sex and judge them on that basis and treat them differently on that basis instead of on who they are as an individual. And it took me a while to see that, but that emotional thing with those videos started to wake me up. And then, like you, there were people who I discovered who I thought I had, I thought I knew what they were about, right? Like, you, in any cult, you get a lot of received opinions. It's an opinion somebody gives you, but you don't actually, you've never done the work to listen to that person or read their book or watch a lecture or anything. You just know. And so I just knew, that Milo was a crazy white supremacist, sexist, and he's someone who, when I started looking into his stuff like you, I was like, wait a minute. I think he's kind of funny sometimes, and I don't
Right.
agree with everything he says, but I
No.
also don't think he's a white supremacist. They're wrong. Like,
Right.
this received opinion I had about him was wrong, just like the received opinion I had about Trump supporters being the violent ones was wrong. And so things started to wake me up. Jordan Peterson, um, I shared a link on social media and was calling him a transphobe, and I went to his video fully intending to tell him off in the comments about what a transphobe he was. And I watched his video, and I did not think he was transphobic.
Right.
And
Right.
it kind of blew my mind because I was like, he's making a great argument against compelled speech. He's not saying anything transphobic at all. And
Right.
so all these little things started putting cracks in the belief system, but it was a slow build, you know, of opening my, and then once you realize you've been lied to about certain things, then you're more open to saying, I think I should start. Here's a novel idea. Maybe I should investigate the things I have strongly held opinions on that I've never investigated. If I think Ben Shapiro is evil, but I've never listened to a speech of his, where's that opinion coming from?
Right.
You know? So it requires you, though, Peter, and you probably know this, as you sounds like you're doing the same thing. It requires you to say sometimes, well, I don't have an opinion on that subject yet or that person yet because I haven't done the research necessary to have an opinion. Wow, imagine, I never used to do that. I always had an opinion, even though I
Right.
didn't. Like, lately, people ask me about my opinions on, like, where are you politically now? Well, I'm still liberal on most policy positions, but there are some things now that I don't like. Climate change, I don't know what I think about that anymore. I'm
Mm.
for protecting the environment, but do I
Mm.
believe that 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 all the stuff that climate change activists say is true. I don't know, because I think it would require so much reading on my part, and it's something on my list, but I haven't gotten there yet. So I don't talk a lot about climate change because I
Right.
don't have an opinion on it.
Right. And not just that, but the idea, especially because Thomas Sowell brings it up perfectly. Everybody, pretty please read Disparities and Discrimination by Thomas Sowell. Don't worry, everybody. He's a black guy. Which, by the way, anyway, one thing at a time, Pete. But one of the things he talks about is how, I mean, yes, we want to benefit the environment, right? We want to save the environment, but that doesn't mean, here, government, here's a blank check, do whatever you want, right? Because what happened and literally Thomas Sowell specifically cites what happened in the Bay Area and the incredible housing crisis. And the incredible prices that are happening in the Bay Area. Apparently, it happened in mostly the 70s, because what happened on that small strip of land, the Bay Area, was all these different principalities decided, you know what, we want to protect this part, and we want to protect this part, and we want to protect this part. We no houses here, no houses here, no houses here, and so you have a very small window where you can build houses, which skyrockets the price and has the exact opposite. Because all these leftists are like, gentrification, but they have no idea that they fucking caused it themselves. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like we don't, just because there's one benefit doesn't mean that there aren't high costs on the other side, right? Yeah. And Thomas Sowell does an amazing job of going through every single thing. And it's not emotional, which is weird. No.
That's something I think, and maybe this happens on the right too. I don't know, because I haven't been on the right, but I will speak to the left. On the left, I will say we have a tendency not to look at the consequences of our good ideas to see if they actually worked, or if the policy worked, or if there's any negative consequences. It's like if the intention is good, then that's all we care about, and let's do this, and let's see. And so that took me a while to understand too, because I used to be all about, the intent. Like, think about minimum wage argument. So I've seen people on the left say, if conservatives don't agree with raising the minimum wage, that means they don't care about people. Well, that's not true. They care about people and they're against raising the minimum wage because they believe that raising the minimum wage means that small businesses go out of business, or they cut hours, they cut shifts, they lay people off, and that it hurts people. And that's exactly why they're against raising the minimum wage, is because they care about people just like you do. You're for raising it, leftist person, hypothetical left. You're for raising it because you want to help people. They're against raising it because they want to help people. Yep. But there's this inability to hear that, like, hey, just because our methods, our beliefs on what works is different, doesn't mean that we have different goals, or that person's evil and they don't share the same goals as me. It's like, no, they. I think my advice to conservatives would be to get better at emotionalizing, making the emotional argument. And, if a leftist is talking about raising the minimum wage, they will tell a story. They're not going to give you a bunch of stats. They're going to say, think of the single father of 4. Yes. Yeah. See, do you want the single father of 4 to have to live on X amount of money per hour? And they paint a picture in your head of this fictional father, right? The right will be like, well, when the minimum wage is raised, the percentage of businesses they give you a bunch of stats. No, they need to get better at telling the story too, and say, think of the father of 4 who gets his hours cut and loses one of his part-time jobs because the minimum wage got raised. Paint a story the way they do, with the facts on your side.
Right, and especially as far as the minimum wage thing, I think it also goes back to the idea of the coddling thing. A lot of these people, like even the words you just said, a father of 4.
Yeah.
I don't think a father of 4 on the whole has a minimum wage job. I would venture to say, if he's got 4 kids already, he's been in the workforce for at least 6 years. There's no fucking way. Okay, unless he's, unless he's a black teen. Let's be fucking real. That motherfucker's be fucking. But the reality is like, okay, someone has to live with a minimum wage job. Okay, what happens 9 months later? No one thinks about that ahead of time. Thomas talks about that. No one thinks that ahead of time. In 9 months, if he does well at the job, he gets either promoted to a manager position or he gets a raise, or a minimum wage job is designed to be real fucking short term. And yet people think like, well, I can't afford a house in a, most of the people who do work at McDonald's live with their parents. No one's expecting that if you work at McDonald's, you're going to have a 1-bedroom. Shut the fuck up. You know what I mean? That's an asinine idea. You know what I mean? But again, it's built on emotion, just like you were talking about.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll start wrapping up in a little bit, but I do want to say, as far as the emotional thing, my God, I mean, I know I'm smart. I know I analyze well. I know I have unique perspectives, but I do think that's one of the reasons, the emotional, not so much the statistical, is the reason why I come at it as much as I do. I am half Puerto Rican after all. So I do have a lot of heavy-handed, if you've been to more than, 3 protests, you ain't getting fucked. Like there's that is an emotional story. That is a comedic emotional story.
It's comedic. Comedy is so important.
Comedy, exactly. Comedy has made me go, even though I believe that blah, 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 all of a sudden I'm like, ooh, man, that's really funny. I'm laughing involuntarily. A lot of comedy is the act of surprise. It's, I didn't realize he was going to go that way, or I didn't, or whatever. It speaks to you emotionally without you even realizing, right? I went to a show about 2 years ago. I was trying to get laid, and I liked this person, and I didn't really care where she said I got tickets to. I'm like, okay, cool. Turned out to be this weird podcast I've never heard of. They seem to be really popular because they filled up a venue in San Francisco, and it was a kind of a comedy show, but I mean, almost every other joke was and then Trump supporter, and then and it was all. Look at how much I believe the same thing as you. Look at poor women, poor black person, poor that was the vibe. And even though I wildly disagreed with a lot of it, I didn't heckle. I didn't shout them down. I sat there, not just because I was trying to get laid, which I did not, but not only because I was trying to do that, but also because I tested my fucking mettle, and I sat there like I would hate if someone starts yelling at whoever. So you know what? I'm going to sit here and I'm just going to suck it up. And yet that's missing maturity, missing from the left. And so I feel like sometimes, I kind of see it as like super friends. We need the Ben Shapiros who are like tiny little, Jewish legal bullets who are just like, bah, 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 bah. Then we also need the heavy-handedness of, of Milo to just go, all feminist is cancer. Like we need both sides of that,
You need a troll. Milo is an interesting character because he plays several roles, and I also think people when it's on the left, they don't have trouble with that. Like they can look at someone who's a comedian and also listen to them speak seriously on subjects and not have a problem with it. But when it's someone on the right playing several roles, they seem to have a problem. There are some things he says in jest as a comedian that are hilarious, and they try to pretend like those things were said in seriousness. Then there's other times he's literally trolling, and there's times when he's very serious. Like he does a lot of different roles. And but you're right, that trolling aspect of it, the funny aspect, like we definitely need that. I think everybody has different talents, and anybody who is trying to speak truth and and if you're trying to speak against my old belief system, like you said, we need the Ben Shapiro's, and we need the Milos, and we need the Jimmy Dores, who's a progressive, who's a comedian and speaks against some of this stuff. Like we need people I don't care if you're on the right or left. It really doesn't matter to me. I just care if you're an authoritarian or not. I care are you an individualist or are you an authoritarian? Like that's all. And if you're an individualist, like great. We don't have to agree on everything, and we don't have to have the same tactics. And what you said about your behavior, though, at the comedy show made me think of something. You were making sure that your behavior reflected your beliefs. And there's not enough people doing that, especially in my old belief system. They don't do that. They claim to believe in tolerance and equality, and they claim to be anti-racist and sexist, but their behavior doesn't reflect that.
Right.
And their behavior reflects a belief in censorship. violence, racism, sexism, judging people on immutable characteristics. Your behavior tells me what you believe better than your words do.
Right.
So
So just as a starting to close, but I did want to also, is there one relationship specifically? I'm sure you lost acquaintances. I've lost a few. By the way, just as a side note, um, you were talking about so one turning point for me was when I decided I wanted to have a Proud Boy on my show. So it took a lot of work because
wow.
they were keeping, this was 2016 during the, or 2018, I'm sorry, during the heyday of a lot of that. And so they were very closed off. They did not trust my ass. And so I was like, no, I really am just here's some examples. I'm not going to fucking,
Yeah.
try to attack you or put you on the spot or any of that stuff. And so I, knowing that I was going to get a certain bad reaction, I posted, "Hey, I'm going to have a Proud Boy on my show next week," and just the litany of just it's going to be racist, blah 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 blah. It's a white supremacist group by white motherfuckers mostly, the majority white motherfuckers who are saying it's a white supremacist group.
Right.
The Proud Boy I had on my show is a Mexican, puro fucking raza. Okay, and we talked shit about that, and now he and I are friends. You know what I mean? But that's one of the turning points. But
oh wow, that was one for you.
is there one relationship specifically that, and you don't need to go into details, but like, is there one specific relationship that you lost that you're really sad about? Is there one that came back around? Is there like, or one that, how would you get through to that person who obviously is now probably on the other side of an island intellectually and just won't be willing to listen to you? Is there one that stands out to you?
There's one that stands out to me that I lost, that she's what I call a professional SJW. So she's in the media journalism, and we were not just acquaintances, we were friends. We were in some of the same feminist groups, and we went to get our nails done together, and we had parties, we were friends. And she publicly unfriended me on Twitter and called me a former feminist who's now turned into a red-pilled right-wing troll. I think she called me alt-right too. I can't remember. And that was very public. I don't miss it. Like, here's the weird thing. I don't actually miss it because I've found much deeper, better friendships since then. But definitely when it happens in the moment, you're going to feel sadness that relationship is ending, for sure. And I have, but what's happened is that I've made a lot of new friends who the bonds are much stronger. It's not built on whether or not I'm an ally in their ideology. And I'm a pretty new believer. I'm a Christian now, and I have friends who are atheists. My co-host Carter's an atheist. He's become one of my best friends. It's not built on having a shared religious ideology. It's built on something deeper. And he's a great example of the opposite. So he was someone who was just like the friend I mentioned earlier, like her. He was someone I knew through the entertainment industry, who I was just had been in meetings with maybe once or twice, but we weren't really close. And then when my beliefs started changing, he reached out to me and wanted to get to know what was going on with me. And we ended up doing the show together, and he's become one of my best friends. And,
awesome.
Yeah, so it's people, if you fear losing relationships, again, I think, to go back to something earlier we were talking about, I think that's going to keep you in unhealthy situations. And you have no idea it's like weeding your garden. If you get the weeds out of there, you don't know what beautiful things are going to grow in their place. Like, they're going to be friendships that fill the gap, that fill the space that you can't even imagine now. And then once you know those new people that you don't know yet, you're going to look back and be like, wow, like that friendship I lost compared to this one. Right. I'm so happy,
Right.
So
it reminds me of that when I was 21. I got into a relationship because, when you're 21, you move across country just to get into a relationship with somebody that you hate. If we went more than 2 days without fighting, it was a fucking miracle. And I remember at the end of that, just devastated. Like, I remember sitting in my car. I think I slept in my car for 1 week or a few days, because actually that was not even the last time we broke up. Because if you break up 3 times in a year, that's a bad fucking sign. But at the end of that, I was devastated. I remember, like, I couldn't go more than a couple of hours, but like all of a sudden I would remember her, and just a wave of regret and shame and loss, and just like, what am I going to do? And then, like, 6 months later, or less than, I remember thinking, like, I remember either it was, you know, I had just had sex with somebody else or I was whatever. And I was just like, oh, thank God I'm out of that fucking relationship. Like, thank God I'm not with this person who I hate anymore. And, you know, so keep heart, guys. Like, keep heart. Like, if you're afraid, number one, if you're white, reach out to me. I've got the right fucking pigment or skin, skin color. You know, I'll trump their bullshit with that. And then we can talk about ideas. We'll get a level playing field maybe. And then number two, you know, be if you could say one last thing to the people who, because we've already talked about how to get to those people. It's really to pop the intellectual Facebook bubbles, the echo chambers that we have, and that's a long conversation. But once, let's make believe you could say one more thing to that person who, okay, there's a little chink in the armor. What would it be if you could say, like,
well, here's a very basic question. You have to get past their programming. They spit out these things that they just repeat them. They repeat things like silence is violence without having really thought about what that means and whether they really agree. Silence is violence, you know, racism is prejudice plus power, saying that you don't see color or that you're colorblind is racist. They just repeat these things. You have to get past their programming where they're off the map and they're forced to try and think for themselves and answer your question. So here's a very basic question to ask somebody. Do you believe that the way to end racism is to treat people differently and judge them differently on the basis of race? That's a simple question, but you're going to make some people think because the ideology tells them, yes, we must treat people differently on the basis of race. But some of them haven't realized that yet, that that's what the belief system tells them. And they're going to say, no, we shouldn't. So then now you've got an opening because you've planted that seed. Or same thing with sexism. Do you believe that the way to end sexism is to judge people and treat them differently based solely on what sex they are?
right?
It seems like a simple question. We're at a place now where it's such a convoluted belief system, and it's so it contradicts itself so much that I think it's sometimes the most simple questions that can make people kind of come out of, have to think on their feet for a second, you know? So, you know what? Somebody said that to me. I asked that question the other day of an executive I used to know in entertainment who just came at me on my wall recently and started calling me a white supremacist and all this stuff. And I was like, and he's a senior vice president at Fullscreen, which is a company owned by Warner. And he had just been through, on his Twitter feed, I saw he had just been through some of these racist indoctrination seminars, like in the book Ordinary Men. And he was all bragging about, like, I'm so proud to work for Warner. We go through these seminars and we're learning about, this is a white guy. I asked him that question and he point blank said, of course we should treat people differently on the basis of race.
Right.
That's what he said. So some of them are so far into it, it's not going to make him think but what I liked about that was he was speaking truth. When the ideology gets filtered down, it's like pseudo-intellectual jargon. You have people like Robin DiAngelo writing this crap, and it starts in academia. Once it's filtered down several levels, now it's filtered through a corporation. Now it's filtered down to an idiot. Sorry, I am going to name call him the third person. An idiot who, when it comes out of the idiot's mouth, he accidentally reveals what it actually is. He's telling you, yes, we must treat people differently on the basis of race.
Right.
Okay, thank you for being honest.
Right.
If you believe that, that is a racist belief, and good luck with that. I think that you're horribly misguided. But people, unlike, there are going to be people though who will not say that.
Right.
And those are the people who they're going to try and do mental gymnastics to still defend the belief system, but at least you've made them think and you've made them say, no, I'm not cool with that. Okay, so why are you doing it?
Right. And also, just I always talk shit about white liberals, but I really think that they are the main problem because they can't speak to these black people, especially black women, who have the bullhorn. They're not allowed to, based on the ideology, right?
Based on the ideology.
We have white progressives who are losing their jobs, even though they're full on SJWs because of their race. So since they can't even reach these black people, it's got to be the black motherfuckers who are in the middle or on the right need to step up. It's got to be people of color. It's got to be women. It's got to be gays. It's got to be trans to poke through that identity politics blinders. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I also think partially it's white liberals that are a problem because there's more white people. You know what I mean? Like there just is.
Well,
Um,
yeah. And I don't I to that they say that they believe that here's what's funny. If you are a person in a marginalized group in this belief system, they almost give you this higher status. It's a hierarchy, right? And so you have more oppression points. So you're in this higher status. You get to speak more. You have more power within the belief system, whatever. Unless you don't speak the ideology. And then you see what they really believe comes out because they will always go to identity to attack you first, just like white supremacists. If you're a white person and you're not speaking the ideology, they're going to attack your whiteness and they're going to say, oh, white fragility, white privilege, white supremacy, blah, blah, blah. If you're a black person and you're not speaking the ideology, what are they going to call you? I've seen this happen. They're going to call you racist names.
Right.
They're going to call you awful like name words I won't even say, but they say these words.
I will.
But they don't care. They're going to call you, a house Negro. They're going to call you. They're going to go right to your identity again. I saw a video. I'm in a couple of SJW groups on Facebook because I like to see where the ideology is going and what they're saying. And I'm in one of these groups that's cropped up called Expose Your Local Racists. There's tens of thousands of people in this. And what they do is they post screenshots and they send the mob after people. Now, some of the people that they're posting screenshots of have actually done something that I think is wrong, but other people know.
Hang on, I got a call real quick. Well, no, just repeat the last 5 seconds. You said they send the mob after people.
They send the mob after people. And so some of the people in one of the groups I'm in have posted things that I think are racist. Other people have not. There are other people they're targeting who simply don't agree with this ideology and have said nothing racist at all, but they're getting targeted and they dox them and post where they work and they get flooded with tens of thousands of hateful comments. And, a lot of them end up shutting their Facebook profiles off, but they're trying to get them fired and stuff. It's crazy. It's watching online witch hunts happening. So I'm in one of these groups and the other day, someone shared in the group, they did a faux pas, a no-no. They shared a video of Candace Owens or Terrence K. Williams or some black person who doesn't agree with the belief system. And in the comments, do you know what the social justice warriors did? They called just a litany of racist names in a group that's supposedly about exposing racism, a litany of racist names. And then someone posted a video compilation where they had taken video footage of, I guess it was a Trump rally, and there was a little section there with black Republicans for Trump or something, and it was during the part where there's music playing at the rally, and I had never seen this footage before, but it was.
Oh yeah, I have
dancing.
a friend who went there. Yeah.
Okay, so I recognized Terrence K. Williams, and there was a couple other guys I recognized, but I can't remember their names. Anyway,
my friend Kevin McGarry, he's a black conservative. He's been on my show. Amazing guy. Anyway, continue.
I should send you this video and see if he's in there. So they took that video footage of black Republicans for Trump dancing at the rally, and then they superimposed a song over the top of it, and the song was like watch this COO and watch this coon dance, and they were just calling it was one of the most racist things you could say about people, and that was the attack. They attack the identity, just like white supremacists.
And I just want to close by saying I know, because I have a few liberal diehard fans and friends who are listening right now who think, well, but we'll reach a point where, okay, but we still need to push that far extreme, but we'll reach a point where I'll be able to speak up. No, you fucking won't. Stop it now. You're responsible. You are responsible. God damn it. If I listen, one of the things I always say, and I really got to stop because I got to piss so bad, but one of the things, this is the polishedness that you're going to get on Conservatish. Subscribe wherever you're listening. But one of the things that I always say is I would agree with your medicine if the diagnosis was correct. I would agree that we need to riot in the streets if this was really, police were killing blacks in the streets instead of only 9 unarmed motherfuckers died in all of 2019. I would agree with your medicine if your diagnosis was correct, but your diagnosis is not. But the reason why that I get so animated about these is because these kids, these leftists who are listening right now, who listen every week, you're going to be fucking killed too. You're going to be dehumanized too, because this is bigger than you. If I was really thinking that Trump was a complete, I mean, I think he's a little racist. I think we're all a little racist. But do I think that that's powerful? If I really thought that there was someone on my side who was driving the cultural narrative, like we were talking about earlier, culturally, there's nothing set up where centrist right people have to bend the knee, have to knee jerk. I'm a piece of shit. I'm sorry, black person, but there is something you're going to get. Leftists, listen to my fucking words, Benjo, because I know he's listening. You're going to be under the fucking tracks. You're going to be trampled by this fucking machine too. Okay, it's time to speak up now. I don't care how non-conservative you are. Join the fucking movement to stop this dog shit, please.
And it's systemic. They want to talk about systemic racism. This is systemic. The corporations are speaking it, fools. The corporations are speaking it. And the Democratic Party is speaking it. All the media is speaking it. It is the system. The system is social justice ideology right now. This kind of racism is what's systemic right now at this point.
Right.
I love your rant. I have to go to the bathroom too. So
plug your stuff then, please.
Oh, you guys can follow us online at unsafespace.com. We have a YouTube podcast. You can find our podcast wherever podcasts are found. Look for Unsafe Space, and we have a book club if you want to join the book club. And I think that's it. Thank you guys thank you for having me on, Peter. And I hope to meet you in person now that
Absolutely.
I've met
you. Yeah. Make sure you subscribe wherever you're listening. Make sure you rate, leave a review, leave a comment, please, and share this with your less offendable friends. You can find me on social media and all that bullshit. I love you all very much. Thank you so much again, Keri. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Hi, Peter. And I dig your facial hair.
Oh, thank you very much. I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.